Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of season 2. Today we are going through Meet the Broker. We are going to be joined in a second by Merri Cronk from FranNet, and we're going to dive into what you franchisors need to know about working with Merri and as well as FranNet. Let me bring in our group. There's Charles and there's Merri. Merri, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. What I would love for you to do is frame this in 2 ways. One would be pre-COVID, how are you feeling about things as this year went? And now during COVID, does that open up more opportunity? Do you feel how do you in essence feel about where things stand? I would love for you to frame that as our first point of discussion.
Well, pre-COVID, we were going into a strong year, and so all good there. You know, when COVID happened, obviously things started to change. We saw some things slow down a bit, but what was interesting was the resilience of our essential businesses. Service businesses that cater to busy homeowners continue to thrive. Some pet services as well. Dedicated to serving pets at home. We saw more people just in general getting things taken care of at home, things that they hadn't been able to do, maybe that honeydew list. So I think post-COVID, we're going to see a lot of opportunity still with those businesses, and we're going to continue to see opportunity with more retail and food and automotive businesses as businesses continue to reopen, as real estate becomes more available. And certainly, you know, it can be a great time for business to get started, just with the fact that, you know, funding is has some interesting accessibility at the moment. So,
Merri, and it is, there's been a number of changes, and funding's interesting, real estate's interesting in terms of the opportunities. Merri, for franchisors, franchise brands, what are you looking for, just from a general standpoint? What do you look for in a brand that at least you look at and say, this is a brand I want to work with and I think it's worth my time?
Well, from a FranNet perspective, we actually vet the franchisors that we're working with in some great detail. You know, one is simply looking at the high level, like you mentioned, Charles. You know, are these things worth our time? Do we have opportunity to grow them in our local markets? We also look at things like, are they well funded to be taking on franchisees? Do they have happy franchisees that are making money and would choose that business again? Do they feel well supported as a part of not only the training, but ongoing? So we take a really close look at those things prior to engaging with franchisors so we can provide them with qualified prospective franchisees.
Merri, when you get a candidate that's coming to you, clearly you have an inventory of franchisors that have been vetted by FranNet that says, okay, here are the check marks. We feel like these are viable brands, which in my opinion ends up being a very important part of the responsibility of the broker community to make sure that we actually have inventory that we would put our stamp of approval on. So now the buyer comes to you and says, I'm interested in X. How important is it for that franchisor to get information about why, out of the inventory, why they should be front and center with you? And like, how valuable is that educational session back to you to give you the tools to be able to now use your candidate or educate your candidate in a way that is going to guide him or her to the right brand?
You know, there's a couple ways that this comes up for us at FranNet. One is we do franchisor training. So we want to make sure that they are okay with, in line with the things that our assessment provides. We had some aha moments recently with the franchisor when they realized that they really needed to look at the way that prospective franchisee viewed the world, especially today. So, you know, that's an important piece of it. As far as staying in front of us, you know, from a FranNet perspective, we're doing launch calls every Monday, just about, through our inventory folks at corporate. A lot of franchisors are keeping us up to date on registration states on a regular basis and where they are registered. They let us know when someone has gotten into their business and what the background is of that person. And we're able to kind of look at that relative to the people that we should be presenting to the franchisor as things change. You know, during the response to COVID, we saw all kinds of franchisors telling us, you know, this is what we're doing for our franchisees right now. Even some very responsible franchisors coming back and saying, hey, we're going to halt franchise development in order to support our franchisees better, and we'll pick it up again. So they were always staying in front of us, providing that information. But we get a lot of that through email, and that's extremely helpful. It gives us opportunity to go back and reference those things. So yes, being in front of us is definitely important, and just having those things at our fingertips is great. There's one particular franchise group that we work with who now has a web portal for us to go to with the 7 or 8 brands that they have that we work with, and we can do real-time territory checks, and we can see exactly where our prospects are in their process. And of course, it's up to us really to be good communicators and be in front of the franchisors and providing information to them about what our clients' needs are and information that they need to be able to make a good decision, and really communicating those things back and forth. So does that help?
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. And what's also, I think it's great is the assessments that you guys focus on with your franchise brands. And I'd imagine more, you know, this comes up more often with the emerging brands. Merri, when these assessments are happening for a brand that's almost there, what are some of those aha moments where after the assessment, the franchise team realizes we weren't connecting the dots? What are some of the dots they're usually missing?
Well, I think with younger franchisors that are emerging brands, we have 2 things going on. You know, one is that they're eager to have franchisees so they can continue to grow the brand. But 2 is sometimes they don't realize they're taking on early adopters, and early adopters tend to be more entrepreneurial. And sometimes those folks are not going to be the ones that are going to follow the systems exactly. So it's kind of a balancing act there. So, you know, I hope I'm kind of getting to the root of your question, but, you know, when we see those aha moments, it's when they start to realize that they really have more of a form in terms of who they're looking for that makes the business right. And sometimes it just comes out of that experience of having to work with some of those early adopters. You know, for us, we try to kind of help formulate that with them a little bit. You know, if they've got good franchise development folks who really understand that in terms of the assessment up front, I think that's incredibly important. I think younger emerging brands really owe it to themselves to align themselves with organizations that really understand who they need to be looking for, or they need to bring on an experienced franchise developer who can help them work that out.
Merri, when you're looking at your database of your clients, so it would be the franchise buyers that are coming to the table right now, have you seen any rotation, or is there more hesitation? Are they saying I need to see an indicator that brand X can survive this? Are they a little bit more cautious, or are they seeing this as opportunity that says, you know, if I buy in now, if it's a brick and mortar, I have time to find the real estate, and there's going to be a process that I could probably save some money in heavy negotiations right now. But what is the temperature of the buyer right now? Are they hesitant? Are they still steadfast? Where are they at?
That's a great question. So beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? So we have these people that really view the world in terms of achieving their goals. They're moving towards something. These are the people that are really looking at business ownership right now, or they're people that really have the ability to kind of look at their goals and actually look back at the past and, you know, kind of put those things together to figure out that right balance in moving things forward. People that are fearful, you know, they're moving away from things. They're not going to look at this right now. And that's what our database, if you will, the people that we are working with right now have in common. They are focused on the goals. They're focused on the upside. They see the opportunity. Those that are trying to get away from something won't buy a business right now, and that's okay. Eventually, things are going to change and they may be coming back to the table for that. But we do look specifically at that, and we do talk to our clients about that because we want to make sure that they feel like the timing is really right for them and that they have the right point of view for it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So going into Q4, Merri, what's your thoughts about franchise sales? As we pass the next quarter, we're going into Q4, ton of variables, right? What's your thought generally? What's the sentiment among other brokers?
It's a bit mixed. Again, I think those of us that are optimists are going to continue, moving forward, and we're going to be careful. We're going to be cautiously optimistic about the reoccurrence of COVID and what that could mean. In talking to our clients, we're making sure that they understand the timing of things. If they're looking at getting into service businesses, these are businesses they could be in 2020. Chances are, if they're looking at something that's going to require a site, they're going to have a 2021 start. And so, with the advances in medicine and things like that, hopefully we're in a really good place for them to put everything in place they need to have that start in 2021. So I think it depends a little bit on who you're talking to. I personally am optimistic, and we'll continue forward and hope for great things in Q4, that we see a good build to this.
Merri, if you think through and buyer behavior, and maybe in the past, there would be several categories of them. It would be someone who is a multi-unit franchise owner. That would be probably the most coveted franchise candidate for a brand. Someone that has experience in franchising, understands how it works, and has a proven portfolio of success, or has shown success in the past. Then you get to the first-time franchisee, someone that could be the future multi-unit operator. And I think the broker network's done a really nice job of training the three-pack, which obviously to the franchisor, that increases the franchise fee, and there are more costs associated with it. But from a mental standpoint, you're bringing in someone that you're talking through scale with on what does it look like when you get 1, 2, and 3 going, so that you can reach your financial goals as a franchisee. And then if we break that down a little bit, you have those who are steadfast on category X. They're calling you and they're saying, I've always wanted to own a senior care franchise. You get to look through the inventory, and it's probably hard to pivot off of that. And then you get people that are like, I don't know where I need to begin, and you guide them along. For that group, in a time like this, are you seeing the opportunity for brands that have established themselves as successful or essential during this time? Is there any pivoting that's happening, that maybe in February they're telling you that they're interested in owning a painting franchise, and now they're interested in a mosquito franchise?
I don't think there's much pivoting there. I think, it falls on us and our responsibility to make sure people are looking at the right things. You mentioned the person that's hard set on, I have to have a senior care business. The reality of it is, if they cannot get out into the community and build that as a community business and make the connections with the right people because they're afraid to sell or afraid to be in front of people, it's probably not right for them. So we have to have some honest conversations with people up front. If we can find the passion and the skill set and the intersection of those things, that can be a great thing. But not everybody has that. So, as far as pivoting, I think it's possible that we could see some of that coming up. But I also think that people will be really surprised to find that, some of these businesses that they thought might not have done so well during what we've just come through or coming through right now have done great. And so that's where validation is incredibly important, and hearing from the franchisor and franchisees is going to be important. So really staying on track to making sure that they validate well and that their skill sets are in line with what they need to do to grow the business is key there. And nothing has changed that way.
The one issue that, as a franchise law firm, that I'm seeing, and we're seeing it now as brands go through registrations, is that the registration states and NASA, they're giving a lot of pushback on item 19s in 2020 FTDs. And there's been indication this past week that the registration states, they're actually challenging it more, taking a viewpoint of, if your business was impacted in 2020, we're not sure we're going to allow you to have an item 19. And I don't know if this has come onto your radar yet. Have you seen any of this come on and involved in the sales process?
You know, Charles, I spend most of my time with clients in Texas. Okay. And Texas is a filing state. Yeah. So I personally have not run into that. I think it's a fantastic question. And I think that there are people that are more experienced in states like California and Illinois who could speak to you about that.
Yeah, and what's interesting for me and for my clients, Merri, too, is we're now, and I think this is an issue that's evolving this week in a big way. Because if, for example, I have a client who's registered in California, and I pull the item 19 out of that California FTD, I also now need to make a decision as to whether or not I'm going to pull it out of my Texas FTD, relying on the same theories. So, I mean, it's just an issue we've seen becoming more impactful this week, which I guess I could get into a more basic question, which is, and I know you can't rate this 1 out of 10, right? So it's really not the appropriate question. But 1 out of 10, 10 being critical, what do you rate the significance of the item 19s? And what's the data you'd love to see in them? And the data you think is the biggest absolute waste of time?
Wow, there's a lot of details there. So I'll start by saying that validation is key. So nobody should rely solely on the item 19 for information on earnings. It's more of a benchmark, right? If you can use the information that is there to speak to franchisees and actually understand how the business is performing, recognizing that you're going to talk to some folks that are going to be top performers, some that are going to be bottom performers, and those in the middle, I think that's the most important part. So I think that, at least in my world, we recognize that some of these franchisors are making claims there. It's helpful, but it's more important that people actually get to the point of talking to owners, and owners that are good with their numbers, right, typically are more successful franchisees, to really understand how those things really work. And especially right now, you know, as we've gone through these ups and downs, just understanding pre-COVID, during COVID, and maybe what those owners are expecting later this year, you know, going back to your Q4 question. So as far as information that is helpful there, I mean, I think anything you get there is helpful because you can use that information. But we just have to make sure that fundamentally people really understand the difference between what the revenue looks like and what they can actually net out of the business. You know, franchisors that put full information there is incredibly helpful. A lot of them are still just putting the revenue there. But anyway, I think anything you get could be helpful if you use it the right way in really getting back into the validation and asking the right financial questions of the owners.
Merri, I think that's a great answer, right? And I think your answer actually demonstrates the premise of my question was even more off base than what I thought it was, right? which is really great from the franchisor perspective and franchisee. I thought you stated it perfectly, which is, paraphrasing, to use the item 19 as a reference tool in your validation efforts, which is critical. And then on the flip side of that, for franchisors, especially emerging brands, to realize item 19 by itself is not enough. So, I mean, I think that's a perfect answer. I'm glad you didn't attempt to answer my question and actually reframe that. It was perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the last thing I want to end with is what I keep hearing from you. If you're trying to give the piece of advice on how to best work with you so that the franchisor understands what tools you need. I keep on hearing validation, 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 that if a franchisor really wants to establish a truthful and solid relationship with you, then they need to come equipped with the franchisees that are saying, yes, I would buy this again. Yes, they overly supported me during COVID and created confidence in me. That's the key to working with you, is come to the table with franchisees that validate. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, absolutely. And even with the younger emerging brands, realizing that they may not have those franchisees, I mean, that's okay. You know, if they can demonstrate that they're going to handhold people through the startup, and they're okay with knowing that the early adopters are going to have something to say about it, and they're willing to learn, that can be good too, you know, for the right person. So, anyway, yeah, no, I think that's a big key. Validation is key, and really having that self-awareness that they're going to have to work in these businesses, that they're going to have to work at these businesses, and that they really do need to find things that are aligned with their skills, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, well, greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate the time. Merri, thank you so much. For Charles, Inter Nicola, I'm Nick Powles. Thank you for watching yet another episode of A Conversation With. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.